Everyone talks about the joys of motherhood. My sisters would call with glowing tales of their beautiful, lovey-huggy babies that slept through the night from the day they brought them home from the hospital. That was not my experience. I have scars on my body from where my children would bite until their teeth touched. I still flinch when someone hands me a small child because I am so used to being hit and kicked and scratched. You see, my first two children had autism. Motherhood for me was mother hard. There were days the three of us, my daughter on my knee, my son on the other, would sit in the rocking chair crying, alone because my husband was stationed in Korea. That being said, and no matter how difficult things were, we started to get some help. We went through some therapy and my children were doing pretty good. And I started to have a longing. So I called my husband in Korea. The call went something like this. Hi, babe.
Hey.
How's it going?
Fine.
He's a man of many words. I said, I took a deep breath. I've been thinking, uh-oh. I want another baby. Hello? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So we started talking back and forth.
Well, we already have a son and a daughter.
Why do you want another child? And I told him, I was in the Army with our first two children. I was working 14-hour days. And I think somewhere deep down inside of myself, if I'm honest, I blamed myself for what my children were going through. Special needs parents will tell you our children are perfect just the way they are, and they are. But if we could trade anything in a heartbeat to make their lives easier, we would. And I longed for what it might be like to raise a normal child. A neurotypical child is the word that we tend to use. Then I asked him, what if we have another child with autism? And he said, he thought for a minute, as he usually does, and said, who better than us to raise another child with autism? That's a yes in my book. So he comes home from Korea, and 9 months later, we have a beautiful baby girl. And she is my delight. She has blonde, curly hair, big, beautiful eyes. She's snuggly, she's huggly, she sleeps. It was wonderful. It was everything I thought it might be. That being said, we were very cautious. So we enrolled her in a study at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill for infant siblings of children on the spectrum. At 12 months, she underwent a very thorough developmental screening, and she nailed it. She tested at an 18-month level at 12 months, so she was crazy smart. I knew she would be. That being said, and that little fear niggling at the back of my head, I knew we had to be tested again in 12 months. So I cheated. I taught her all the little skills I knew she would need to pass her next test. I taught her to stack the blocks just so. I taught her to pull the blanket towards her to get the toy at the end. And we were going to do fine. So at 24 months, I bundled her up in the car, heart in my hand, and drove back up to North Carolina. The first 10 minutes of the test, she hadn't really engaged with the tester, but I thought, it's a stranger, no big deal. An hour into the test, she still hadn't engaged with the tester. And I thought, well, you know, she didn't sleep well last night. I didn't sleep well. I was a nervous wreck. 2 hours into the test, it was getting a little harder to tell myself things were going to be okay. 3 hours into the test, my hopes had dashed against the rocks. Mrs. Elias, the doctor said, would you please wait in this room while we tally the results of your daughter's exam? Sure. I pulled her into my lap, and I smelled the top of her head, which for me is just my Zen spot. And she looked up at me with her big, beautiful eyes, as if to say, Mama, I'm so sorry. Mrs. Elias, the doctor walked in. We're fairly comfortable giving your daughter the diagnosis of autism. We're pretty comfortable with that. We found that if you enroll her in ABA therapy and get her into a developmental preschool as soon as possible, wah, 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 all I could hear was autism. She talked for about 20 more minutes, handed me a stack of paperwork, and I took my daughter out to the car. I buckled her into her seatbelt, once again just taking a minute to smell the top of her head. I sat in my seat and I started the car, and I sat there. Another child with autism. Have I done something wrong? Am I a bad parent? Another child with autism. Do I call my husband who's in Afghanistan and tell him? Or do I wait until he comes home? Another child with autism. I started the car, and on my way home, I swear I went through all 5 stages of grief at once because I processed things really, really quickly. First came denial. It can't be autism. I cannot have a third child on the spectrum. What are the odds of that? These tests are not empirically validated. I am certain they are wrong. Then came anger. How dare God do this to us? How dare he do it to her? It was so hard for my first 2, and now it's going to be hard for her. Then came bargaining. God, give me cancer. Take this from her, please. Don't make her do this. Then came grief as I grieved the loss of the child I thought I was going to have. Then came acceptance, and the words my husband spoke came back into my head once more. Who better than us to raise another child with autism? Thank you.